I first of all would like to thank all of you for being here today, talking about the Loire, which is, one of, if not my favorite wine region in the world. I shouldn't say that since I live in California, but I'm okay. The Loire and Champagne. I'm going to be honest, but it's great. To have this, especially since the Loire is an area that was one of the pioneers when it comes to natural wine. So I think there's a lot to be learned and from everyone who's listening in. The moderator is Julie Bainbridge. Julie and her husband Toby have the GAEC, the wine glass, which was formerly known as Julie and Toby Bainbridge. I've known Toby for 7 years, and actually I've known Julie for as long too. I guess we actually met at the same time. And it's great. We've become friends and have so much respect for the work that they do together. Julie is now actually making her own wine, some of her own wine too, but she can tell you all about that. Also, Julie is American, as you might notice by her accent, but lives in the Loire and has been for many years now. So I'm going to let you take it away, but thank you so much for doing this. And after this, there are lots of other great panels too. So I hope that everyone who's tuning in right now will have a chance to check out some of the other discussions we're going to have today.
Thank you, Pamela. I just wanted to say thank you to you and the behind-the-scenes people for putting all this together, because we know how much hard work it is to organize so many people all at once. Before I start, I wanted to thank Louis Dresner Selections for sponsoring this panel. Louis Dresner Selections is one of the original natural wine importers into the USA. And it was founded by the late Joe Dresner, so thank you very much. I will ask maybe if everyone can hear me properly. I'm just going to look in the chat and make sure that there's no... Hi, Christy. I'll make sure that there is no echo or anything. Otherwise, if Evelyne and Lisanne, you want to keep your mics on, that's fine, so that we can actually chat. I won't ask you. I might just mute you myself, which I think that might be fine. Panelists, attendees, thank you so much for being here. This is my first kind of thing, and I'm having, just a few technical difficulties, so that's fine. If you have any questions, it would be great to direct your questions into the Q&A, and I will be checking those. So if there's a question that's relevant to what we're talking about, I'll go ahead and ask. If it's not, then maybe we'll try to wait till the end. So I'll be watching the chat. I'll be watching the Q&A while we're talking. I'll just go ahead and introduce myself quickly. I'm very, very new to this. I've been in France since 2001, but Toby and I didn't actually start making wine until 2007. My first harvest, I was in the hospital having a baby, so I did not get to be part of that. That was all Toby. I've sort of just been the farm wife behind the scenes, helping with anything that needed to be done in the vines. I've been cooking for the harvest crew, sort of a support system for Toby. In 2012, Toby stopped working for Domaine Mosse and started working for us full time. 2018, like Pamela said, I became partner in the GAEC. It's actually it's a groupement agricole en commun, which means family members who work together. It's a way to I don't know how to explain that in English actually. It's just a way for family to work together on the same farm. So that's kind of my background. I'm learning as I go. It's more of a hands-on kind of thing, and I don't have the family background in the wine, and I don't have the formal education, but I do feel like hands-on is quite good. If you would like, Evelyne, if you would like to introduce yourself, I'll shut up now, and I'll give you the mic.
Thank you, Pamela, for inviting me to this panel. I'm very honored to be there tonight. And thank you, Julie, for asking me also. So I am a young winemaker. I started only 20 years ago. My family asked me to take over the Domaine du Closen in 7 years, but I had not been raised there. It was an aunt that had this domain before my mother. And so I thought it was a very big challenge, quite interesting. And contrary to Julie, I don't have really hands-on. I do have some hands-on, but I've more approached the whole thing by a lot of traveling and reading and talking to people. And I have some workers who help me and I have a really great team. And so I've been very interested in learning more about the history of Savonière, the history of Anjou, the history of wine. And that's really more my approach. And also my approach is the link to nature, which for me is more and more important every day. And I'm preparing a new visit, which will be open on the 3rd of June, which is really a new way of presenting the human link to nature. So if you can all come and visit.
Evelyne, you said you've only been making wine for 20 years. What were you doing before that?
Well, before that, I was the mother of 4 children, and I was also teaching literature, French literature and French culture in the US and in Germany. I lived abroad for a long time.
Okay. Lisanne, tell us about you.
Well, I'm Lisanne. I'm 34 years old, born in the Netherlands. And during my study, hotel management, I discovered that I was actually really interested in the world of wine, which was not really the main part of my study at all. I worked besides, or like in the weekends, I worked in a restaurant where I did the wine, and that became actually a big passion. So after my study, I specialized with a small wine course. I became a sommelier, and I worked for almost 10 years as a sommelier in the restaurant business in Holland, in England, and in Belgium in the end. Especially in Belgium, I met a lot of natural winemakers from the Loire, and they let me fall in love with the work of a winemaker. So there was Noëlla Morantin and Toby Bainbridge as well. So in 2017, I decided to follow my dream, move to France to start winemaking. And it was actually Toby who told me, like, before you do this, Lisanne, you have to make sure that you know what the work is, because it's not as romantic as everybody thinks. And so before I moved there, I already had some experience during holidays and weekends. I experienced some vineyard work, cellar work, harvest. And then I did, in 2017, I did the study in Amboise for winemaking or viticulture in oenology. And after that, I set up my own winery with a cave in Noisy. That's part of the appellation Rouvray. And I just started as a négoce. So for the moment, I buy organic grapes that I vinify myself and do the sales afterwards. So with Edouard, my boyfriend, we're looking for vineyards at the moment to set up our own winery, and I can't wait to grow my own grapes. Did I forget anything? No, I think that was it.
No, but I think what you meant to say earlier was that it was Toby and Julie Bainbridge who helped you decide.
Definitely Toby and Julie Bainbridge.
No.
Yes.
I'm kidding. It was my cooking, wasn't it? My eggs and cake.
Julie makes really good angel cake.
I mean, you said that you were interested in. Sorry, I need to unmute you. You said that you're interested in the history of natural wine. Do you know a lot about the history of natural wine in the Loire?
Well, I don't know a lot, but I've been reading quite a few articles and books about the history of Loire wines. I'm more focused on Anjou, I would say, but I think it's not something that happened just accidental. It's the result of a long history. So what struck me is that really in the 16th century, the Anjou wines were quite renowned. They have been promoted by Dutch negociants, and they were quite renowned. There was also already at that time, of course, in what they call inferior wines, very simple wines that were drunk. That was the largest production, of course, but that was the basic drink for the population because water was not drinkable at the time. So you should drink wine if you didn't want to get some kind of disease. So they were really consumed locally, and they consumed a lot. They consumed like 95 liters per person per year. If you don't count the women and children, that makes a lot of wine for each man, because only the men were inventoried at that time. Only men, voilà.
Did everyone drink the same quality wine?
No. The local people mostly very unstable, very simple wines. It was really fermented grapes, but with nothing special. There was no élevage, nothing like that. The cellars were not really cellars. They were in barns or anywhere, which is sort of the ancestor of natural wine in a way. But there were some very good wines which were mostly exported. Some of them were sent to Paris, but very little. And I think that was the start of the problem, because the reputation of wines was made in Paris, by all the aristocrats that lived in Paris. If they had such wine in their cellar, then this wine became promoted and became famous. And that was the case, for example, for Burgundy wines, Bordeaux wines, even some wines of the Rhone. But it was not really the case for Anjou wines. And so they were never, already as the 16th century, Anjou wines were never considered as great wines, which is a big mistake, because I think there are lots of.
And then, so that was early 16th, 17th century.
Yeah, so exactly. But then, as I say, because the Parisian consumer didn't really promote those wines, then the reputation went down, and it was really, in fact, the Anjou wines were mostly sweet, and that was what the Dutch had appreciated. And I would say in the 18th century, Sauternes become more and more famous because it became sweeter and sweeter, and the Anjou wines didn't really follow. There was like a race to sweetness. And so in Paris, they would drink Sauternes because it was very, very sweet, and they wouldn't drink anymore, if they had ever drank it, Anjou wines. So that's the start of the problem. It's the race for sweetness, which
right.
we didn't win, in fact.
So what changed?
So, in fact, the Loire, on top of that, the Loire River was less and less navigable. So the boats couldn't bring the wines to Paris. and the wines were a little bit exported to the Netherlands or Germany, but they were not shipped to Paris. So the consumer was more and more local, and it was really at that time, I think it was more, what developed really was the basic simple wines, more than the sophisticated wines. And then if we go to the 19th century, then we have the phylloxera that happened, so that destroyed the whole vineyard. And that was a big disaster, because then France imported wines from Algeria and Spain, which at the time were really terrible wines. And they named them by the name of the big wines, like Burgundy, very famous wines or otherwise. So to protect, there was forgery really. So to protect the good wines, in general, that was not particularly in Anjou, some people decided to create the AOC system, the appellation d'origine contrôlée, which was supposed to protect very good wines. But then it was so successful that, especially in Anjou, everybody wanted to have an AOC. So they developed AOC with lower quality wines, like Rosé de Loire or Cabernet d'Anjou or wine. And they chaptalized the wines and everything, giving them AOC names. So that really, then, the AOC lost all their values. And I think that was really what brought some people to think about another way to work. And so we arrive in the 90s, and we have a whole team of young people who were young at the time, like Jo Piton and Richard Leroy and Patrick Baudouin and Marc Angeli, and they all started with producing AOC wines, but because they were not using all the chemicals or they were not producing very large quantities, the taste of their wines was a little different, so they were not accepted in the AOC system. And they really started to produce wines, vin de France, and their idea also was to fight against this use of chemicals and to be organic or to be biodynamic. And so really they were the first generation of producing natural wines.
So is this when natural wine came to the Loire, or did it come before?
Well, I think it was also following the tradition of peasant wines.
Okay.
All of these people, they had a special look. They had a cap. They wanted to look like a peasant, although they were not peasants. They were highly educated and were from different backgrounds. But they obviously wanted to refer to these peasant wines that had been produced for centuries. And
I think it has as well something to do with the different, like if you have Marcel Lapierre in Beaujolais, like there are more regions who had their like legends who started to introduce natural wine, and that kind of helped get a movement going, maybe?
I don't think they introduced natural wines. I think they gradually worked towards that because they were, they couldn't produce AOC wines with the way they wanted to produce wine. They wanted to produce it without chemicals, and they wanted to produce real terroir wines, which means that they wouldn't add anything. They used natural yeast and so on. And the result was not accepted by the AOC system. And so they gradually evolved into producing, into calling them vin de France. And then the movement of called natural wines came. That's fairly recent. I don't know exactly when it's been called like that, but it's not very old. And I think it's been developed also by American importers like Joe Dressner, or before him by Kermit Lynch, for example.
Because like the what you are explaining about the AOC system, that's today still an issue. Winemakers are getting refused the AOC because their wines are not tasting the same, but the wine is originally tasting like this, and because of everything that all the additives that we have, we change the character and we change the image of an AOC.
Absolutely. It's been a bad use of the AOC system, because in fact, originally it was not, it became. Yeah, but it's very stiff now. I think some people have power in the organization and don't want to lose their power, so they don't, it's very hard to change anything.
So the restraints in natural wine, Lisanne, in the AOC system is because natural wine is natural itself, it's not going to fit in the category where they want it. But it's not just the wine and the flavor, it's also the farming practices as well. Is that right?
Yeah.
You mentioned when we talked before about the AOC, you talked about someone close to you who was refused. His vineyards were not planted in the correct way. So it's that don't fit into the AOC.
No. Well, in that case, it had nothing to do with the flavor. It had to do with, I don't know, this is a stupid thing, with, saying that there is 10 centimeters too large, or it doesn't make any sense. So,
in between the vineyard, in between the plants, there's
between the vines, yes.
Yeah.
It's one of the best winemakers in 7 years. But that's, he doesn't pretend to make natural wines, and he does it, in fact, but we also have to make a definition. There is no real definition of natural wine.
No. And that's the problem, I think, nowadays, like the big, well, or maybe that's for later if we speak about future of natural wine. The big commercial wineries who see now that natural wine is becoming or wines without sulfur is a thing, and they all start to do it. But the wine is as dead as it can be, pasteurized. You can't filter anymore, I think, anything out of it. So it's a danger of the
character.
Yeah, well, like what is natural wine?
Yeah.
So,
Lisanne, that's why I think we. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, I think that it's another aspect that some of these winemakers have understood early, is that they have to create a strong brand, which makes them very different from what you say from cooperative or big brands. And it seems to me that the orientation is to have their own name and their own picture being promoted. That their brand is their name, which was not really the tradition in France. And I think that's very developed in the Loire. But it's probably to oppose themselves to big brands. Because you buy the name, but you don't only buy natural wine, you buy a person.
Yeah. That leads me to my next question. Lisanne, when you you chose the Loire, did you choose the Loire because you knew the wines, you knew the region? You can tell us that. And then tell us, was it difficult to come here? Was it accessible?
Yeah, well, the reason why I chose the Loire is not really complicated. I moved a couple of times to abroad and it's not always easy to move to a different country, discover a different culture, set up a new life there. So for me, while I was a sommelier in Belgium, as I said before, I already knew winemakers in the Loire, so it was quite easy actually for me to take this. Or it was almost like logic to go and move to the Loire, because I already had a network of people around me who supported me, and as well, yeah, because of the grape varieties, as well. Maybe the region. I mean, it is really beautiful here, especially Touraine, of course. What was the second part of the question? I'm sorry. You're muted.
Okay, there we go. It says so you did?
No, you're good.
So there. Okay. So I wanted to know was to get started here. You had to go to class.
Yeah, so I had to go to school, which was quite interesting because well, I've been working 10 years as a sommelier, and then I had to sit for 8 hours on a chair listening to people speaking French about winemaking. I was the only first person from abroad who ever did that study. Like others were Canadians, or there was an Italian guy in my class who still speaks, but perfectly French. So for me, it was quite a hassle actually, but it was super interesting. So I felt really welcome because everybody was like super helpful to me, and which was what I think that is really an advantage of the region of the Loire, that they're really open to, not saying foreigners, but like even people from a different region, or it's quite easy to integrate. Like even in the village where I live, there are a lot of elderly people, and they're like super welcoming, and yeah, especially from abroad. After that, like in between the wine world and with wine makers, it's nice as well. I think as a woman, you get accepted. So there are a lot of people around. Like it's a nice community, but people who are helping each other, especially if you start up. So
I don't know. Was it women always accepted, or did women have a different role? I don't know. Were there female vineyards in the 20 years ago?
Is that okay? No? Yeah. No, there were some women winemakers, but they were very, very few, and it was mostly in 7 years. But most of the time, the model was that the man was really responsible for the whole thing, and the woman, I think that's what you did. The woman was cooking and doing the administration, and was behind the scene, which can be okay, but the problem is that they didn't have an official status. That means no pension when they get old. So that's what the real problem. And now everybody tries to have a status. But there is another model among the winemakers who make natural wines. The model is to have a very small farm with 6 or 7 hectares at the most, I think. And that is not enough to feed a family, unless you're really becoming very famous, but that takes a little while. So most of the time, the spouse is working somewhere else and is feeding the family. And the man is like an artist, farming and making things, but not bringing enough money.
Yeah.
That's quite often.
We have 7 hectares, and I've actually been able to, but I don't teach. I'm 3-4 days a week. On Wednesdays, of course, I'm with and taking them to sport school in the afternoon. And the time the kids actually come with me and Tony. They are getting older now on their own, but when we met with the banker at one point, when the first thing she said to me was, "You'll be right."
You see?
No way! You don't want the money tractor. I'm going to be out of vine. That is something that I learned because everybody asked me, "Oh, you'll be in the office."
I had that one time when I went to. Sorry, yeah, I had that one time when I went to shop to buy some technical stuff, and I arrived there, and they come every year to check my press to do the maintenance, but this guy, he either didn't remember me or didn't know me, and I said like, yeah, I need this and this, and then he says, okay, what is the company? So I said, yeah, it's Sonshine, and he's like, oh, who's that? So I said, well, it's my company. And he's like, yeah, but who's the director? Me, myself, and I. And then it's like, oh, yeah, well, and it's crazy that nowadays you discover things where you're like, wow, we're in 2021 and they're still not used to.
The mayor, I'm not saying all of them, but there's still this macho thing going on here.
Definitely.
Lisanne and I, work clothes are pretty much here, and
yeah, no, but I mean, Carhartt is like available and have good working clothes for women in the USA, but we can't get them in Europe. And it's the same. Like I make wine in Australia as well. Well, everything that I can buy in Australia, I fill up every time I'm there. I fill up a suitcase because they have really good working clothes for women. And shoes, because women do hard yakka, as they say there, hard work, and so it's all available here in France. It's impossible.
Yeah,
interesting.
Other ladies around, but I don't think on the Anjou, the Loire is quite welcoming and open-minded. I think. People are happy to be open to new ideas and new ways, new different flavors of wines, and they're happy for people to discover these. I don't know.
Not always. I think among winemakers, yeah, definitely there are a lot of winemakers who are experimenting new things and very interested in moving forward. But all our syndicates and our interprofession is not like that. They are very, very slow and closed to new ideas. and they haven't traveled. You know, can you imagine that the former president of Interloire, which is the organization for almost all of the Loire, had never been in the US and had never exported a bottle. So you can imagine, you know, how can he even consider?
Does he speak English?
No, he didn't. He didn't. That's a problem. They don't speak English, most of them. But it's apparently the winemakers who are interested in moving forward, in doing very interesting things, they don't have time to be elected and to be part of these organizations.
And here you have to do so much paperwork to get something done. So
Yeah.
If you have to run your company and do that on the side, then yeah, can be complicated.
So earlier we were talking about how the weather today is. It's actually, we've had hail, we've had rain, and it had a memory pop up. This time last year, it was so hot. My kids were out in the water, and I remember them. First of all, the vines were so much grown. So many leaves. Yeah, so much more mature. And the leaves actually had burn marks on them. Compared to today, at home. Let's talk.
Yeah, after a frost period of 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Very sensitive subject at the moment, I think.
Maybe we want to hear about. We've got some questions about privacy, and how has it affected you this year, the climate?
Well, I think it has affected the whole country. Luckily, at least in Anjou, or at least in Savagnin, because it's not the same everywhere. But I don't know how it was in your farm, but here we had pruned very late, so that the buds were very, very small. So when it froze, it didn't affect them very much. But that means, you know, pruning very late is complicated to. You have to find something to do for the people, for the team before that, or you have to tell them to take vacation. I don't know. We'll have to prune later and later.
Or you have to be able to prune late, because if you have 25 or 30 hectares, it's impossible to prune everything late, I think. Unless you have a big team.
True. Yeah.
What happens to the plant when you leave it late to prune? What happens to the plant? Does it go in and prune? Does that take the power away from the plants, or does that make it hard for the buds to push later?
Yeah, I think so. We noticed, it depends how it's pruned, but last year we noticed that the vine were producing less. They were tired in a way. So it's not necessarily the best solution. But what is the solution? That's really hard. We don't know. We might, you know, we are, and I've started planting some vines with new porte-greffe, new rootstock that were more resistant to the drought, and maybe helping also to facing the frost. I don't know. We'll see. But it's very hard to, you don't know what to do. Our new cépage means we would have to stop using chenin and using something else. So it will be making a whole different wine.
I think it's interesting, because apart from the frost, what's going on, what is it now, 6-7 times in 10 years that we have this frost period. And if you see what happened, how the evolution is for this problem in climate change, then I think it's really I think only people start to realize now maybe that there has to be a change and that we have to do something more performatically, because we can't wake up during 1 month every 3 days to burn fires or candles in the vineyard to protect the vines. First of all, it's climate wise not the best solution, and like for us as humans, it's not possible, because when you work during the night, during the day, you're not as productive as you are normally. And it's the same with like the drought, because we here in the Loire we often have a period of frost, of spring frost, and now in the last few years we saw that there is like drought during summertime, but we hardly have any rain. And if I see around what happens in the vineyards, that, and then I'm not only speaking about organic farming or like, but like in general, that everybody, because the calendar says this month or this week we should take off leaves because the grapes are gonna ripe better, and so we all start to take off the leaves of the plant. But then there's a week of 40 degrees that's coming afterwards, and all the grapes are burning on the plant. So I don't know, Evelyne, what your opinion is about that, but sometimes I have the feeling that there's not enough reflection. Like, are people like ignoring the fact that we have to really start work differently, because yeah, you can't ignore the problem.
No, we can't ignore the problem. And I think in Touraine, people have more invested in windmills or things like that to protect the vineyard. But I'm not sure it was perfect this year, was it?
No, because I think it didn't help fully. It's a little bit depending on the regions, but in general, the wind was coming from the northeast, so it's like a whole technical story as far as I understood. It's like there was not enough warm
air.
Help me, yeah, warm air.
Yeah, the windmills have to bring warm air from above.
Yeah.
There's no warm air to bring down.
No. So like when we had temperatures here that went down to -7, -9, and then it's not working at all.
No. Yeah, we have to work much more on that problem, but I don't know. I think people here, and I'm the first one, we refuse to think that it will go on that, but I think now we have to face it.
Yeah, well, that's what there's like the whole theory of it, like, yes, it's this 10 years a cycle that will go and then it will go away. Nowadays, I think, now we have to get a solution, and maybe windmill is a good solution, but it's a big investment. That's not for everybody either. And then if you have different plots over a region, then you're not, because a windmill is covering 4 hectares in general, as far as I understood. So if you have 1 hectare here and there, you're not able, unless you have a good relationship with your neighbor, you can invest all together on windmills, but then the view of it is not as good either.
Yeah, in fact, we are not in a warming period. We are in a very long period of cooling down of the earth. And during these very long periods, which already happened, there are some periods where it's a little chaotic. The temperature goes up again and down again and so on. But usually everything adapts. It goes slowly, so the plants have time to adapt. And because of the human influence now, the world population and the effect that it has on the climate, everything is going too quickly. So that's why it's so disturbed. That's the explanation of the scientist. But I don't think we can fight against a long cooling session time of the year. So I don't know what we can do. We might have to think about farming something else. No more vine.
Oh no. I want, does future will collect then maybe a change of size or a change of varietals or a different way to make the wines?
I don't know. Yeah, in Savonier, we have last year we have equipped the vineyard with frost. I mean, I don't know how you call them. The capteurs de gel. I don't know what that is in English. And it's little.
What does
captures,
it do?
Yes. Well, it telephones at 2 o'clock in the morning, saying the temperature is going down. You have to wake up. Yeah. So the whole appellation is equipped with that. Well, it's good because it's very precise, and you know exactly when you have because you can't lit up the candles at 8 o'clock in the evening. Then you burn too much money. So it's very nice to have all these precisions. Now, so it's the first thing that we did together. And we have this WhatsApp group, so we exchange during the night. And now we think we have to do something else together, equipping the hills with, I don't know, with windmills or whatever can be efficient in our landscape. Not.
When it was all the frosts in April, and all across the internet of Chile lit up in our region, hovering, and they were happy. And where am I going with this? It's like really understand that they pollution, they only are actually can see it. And they should just let it burn. Did I?
I
don't understand what you mean. What should let it burn?
Am I still on?
Just let them freeze. Just lose your crop. No, Julie, you have.
Sorry, yeah, just light the candles. Just let it, because they're not.
I think what I don't know what I've experienced is that quite a few people living in Savonier came to help, and so they really understood what was our life and what was our problem, and they obviously are very proud of the production in general in the village. So I think you have to communicate more and more and work together with the population. It's not only for the frost, it's also for the spraying, you know. They have to understand that sometimes we have to spray and we are careful and we don't put a lot. It's a matter of communication, better communication and working together.
I wonder if that's because World Heritage Site and it's more.
I think here it's the same. Like we had a lot of locals who are like super keen on helping, and it's definitely important. And the morning that everybody wakes up and sees their village covered in smoke, it's for them as well. They are as terrified, and they really do deal with the others. Actually, deal with the winemakers. Here in my village, it's a lot of people who were winemakers or farmers before, so they know what it is to lose or to risk the risk of losing your crop. And is it natural to not have any crop and not feed your family? Because it is a business in the end for everybody. And if you have only grapes, you can't solve the problem with growing a bit more tomatoes afterwards. That's not how it works nowadays for many winemakers. I spoke with a lady here in the village, and she was telling me that her father had vineyards, and they already had the frost problem at that time, that there was spring frost, and she said like the farm was polyculture, so we had grain, they had different cultures and vegetables, and she said like we planted more tomatoes because with tomatoes we can make money. And so sorry?
You had cereals.
Cereals, thank you. Have another glass of wine, you have. And it's
Question.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, I'm wondering, and if you hear around, and now there are more winemakers who start to talk again about, like, do we have to go back to this polycultural system and stop growing only wines, and do we have less risk if we grow tomatoes on the side, or cereals, or or have a kettle, or
Tomatoes.
Yeah, that used to be the model in the Loire and in Anjou mainly. All the farms had different cultures. It's relatively recent to have specialized farms, and obviously it's difficult to manage when you have such problems.
I think if you grow vegetables, for example, there's less risk. I mean, if your salad is eaten by insects, or if there's a hail and it damages your courgette, then you have maybe other vegetables that are still okay. For us, if we lose the grapes and there's no way to drink afterwards.
Another solution that you know about, of course, is having a négoce, which means buying grapes in other regions or in your own regions, but from people who are not necessarily producing. That has really developed a lot. I think now, I don't know what's the percentage, but more than half of the natural wine producers are buying grapes to cover their cost.
Well, and that's as well. Like if we talk about money, I'm working on a plan to take over vineyards and a winery, and it's actually what the bank satisfies as well. If you say like, okay, I'm gonna make my wine from my own grapes from the vineyards that we grow, and I keep the négoce on the side. I keep buying grapes in case I lose my harvest. I can always have the freedom to buy grapes somewhere else. In France, you can't have the two of them. It's like two different. I'm just saying that for our visitors, that you have those things are separated. So you have either a négoce or you have an agricultural statute of having your own winery. And if you want to have the two, you can't do that in the same company, actually.
Yeah, it was not customary in France to buy grapes. Usually you grow your own grapes. This is something quite new that's been developed.
Yeah.
And it changed completely the role of the winemaker, because then you're not making local wines like terroir wines, but you are buying grapes and just making wine with it, which is a very different attitude. You don't farm these grapes. You don't have the same relationship with them, with the wine that's been produced.
That's true, because what I'm doing at the moment in the same in another way, it's actually as well interesting because we are in the Loire. We're lucky that we have more different grape varieties. We have Sauvignon and red. We have like many local red varieties as well. I started to buy grapes as well from Alsace because in 2018 I lost all the white grapes that I was supposed to harvest because of the mildew, and I bought to have white organic grapes. I bought them in or harvested myself in Alsace, and it's nice for me to experiment and make a different style of wine because I really love Riesling. So I had the opportunity to buy Riesling and vinify Riesling in the Loire. And this is a good thing about Négoce that you can, for us as winemakers, I think it's a great experience to try new things and try different grape varieties that we don't have here in our region.
Yeah, that's based our business. We're able to wonderful Lisanne, who actually comes and helps when she can. So she does, which is nice. She does have her hands in the earth here. With it's up to questions. It's in Q&A. If any of you have questions, first question is, are you still here? Can you see the questions, Evelyne?
Yes, I can see the questions. Do you feel the pressure on complying with
the
Well, in your day-to-day work throughout the year? In a way, yes, because well, honestly, I don't comply completely, but don't tell everybody. Because we are trying to prune differently so that it can, we can survive with the frost. But yes, there is a pressure, definitely. We are not completely free, and I am part of a group of people we are fighting with the INAO, who is the organization that rules the AOC for us, which I think is crazy because the AOC belongs to us. I don't know why we have this organization that rules it for us. So I'm part of the group who fights with them. So yes, we feel the pressure, not only for me, but also for some other winemakers. And I feel that we should all fight together.
I think it's a reason why many winemakers quit the IOC as well, because it's too.
Yeah.
Is it restraining?
Yeah, too restraining. Yeah. But when you produce 7 years, it's a big decision to leave the AOC.
Yeah, well, it's for sure that it's in your region different than here in Touraine, where it's less important if you're with the AOC or not, depending on where you have your vineyards.
Yeah, and I strongly believe in that it's very interesting to produce wine that reflects the landscape. And it should have the name of the landscape. But I think we should really fight and fight and fight to get more freedom. The regulation for 7 years was written, it was only 1 page and there was not much. I don't know why they piled up new regulations every 10 years. This is ridiculous.
Why is it so hard to go back or just to?
I think it's because some people have the power and want to keep their power. I think that's it. They're afraid of any change. It takes 10 years to make a change. But we don't have time to wait for 10 years. The market is there. We have to go fast nowadays.
Yeah. What do you gain and what do you lose? Someone asked as Walker as well. It's as well depending on the price of your land, of the vineyards.
Exactly.
If you are in the appellation of Savagnières, I don't know the price per hectare there, but if you are here in Vouvray and you're making Vin de France, and you do, or either you plant a different variety in a Vouvray vineyard, then it decreases actually the value of your land as well.
You see yourself as playing a role in the Loire that is somewhere between past and present. I wish I was. I've been trying. I bring my little stone, but you remain very modest when you see the effect of what you're doing. So you need several lives, I think, to be able to play a big role.
Yeah. We skipped a question about the method of the frost. Someone asking feu chandelier or aspersion. Here we can't really do that it's not easy to do that here in the Loire. I don't personally, I don't know any winemaker who do that. It's an extremely expensive way of protecting the vineyards, and you need to have access to water because you need a lot of water.
Yeah, apparently it's extremely efficient, but you have to be very, very precise. You have to have enough water, and that's a huge amount of water.
Yeah, and we have the Loire, but it's too far away often from vineyards.
But the people who do it and who are, if they do it at the right time, which is another story, they're quite happy with it.
Yeah, like I know in Holland we have water everywhere, and this is how all the farmers protect, like all their fruit trees. They're all protected with this method, and it's working really well. But yeah, so we burn candles in the Loire, candles, hay bales, and there are even winemakers in, like for example in the appellation of Montlouis-sur-Loire, who fly with helicopters.
But the problem is each system works with one kind of frost and not with all kinds of frost. So if you have the frost coming from the top, or if you have the frost coming from the earth, you need a different system. So there is no perfect system, and obviously the candles are the best system in a way, although it's far from being perfect. It's very expensive and it pollutes, obviously. Yeah.
Apologize. My computer is lagging behind, and so I have you questions?
I think so.
I think so. Because The last question was the margins one. Okay. Want to talk about? Touched on. I want to hear some horror stories from. No, I'm kidding. I don't. Standing
No,
right here.
I think for me, for me as a young if you say that you are a young winemaker because you only do it 20 years. I don't know what I am in that case. Started only in 2018, but like for me, I'm really lucky that I have an older generation who already cleared the path of natural wine. For us actually, or for me nowadays, it's so much easier to sell and promote natural wine than it was, I think, for, as Evelyne mentioned before, Richard Leroy, Marc Angeli, here in the Loire. There are a bunch of winemakers as well who did some really, really great and hard work to get natural wines on the map.
Yeah, Pamela, why do you think natural wine took off the Loire? I think because the Loire was very cheap, and because of this lack of fame, like Burgundy or Bordeaux. Now for Bordeaux it's a different story, but at that time Bordeaux and Burgundy were very, very prestigious and sold there. The farm and the land was very expensive. Here in the Loire, it was quite, very cheap, and there was this tradition of peasant wines that was kind of the model that they have followed.
The epicenter of natural wine, as folks who live and work there, I think that it's not the epicenter, but I think we are really lucky to have such a big community here of natural winemakers. And if you see the wine fair, La Dive Bouteille is one of the biggest natural wine fairs in France. And seeing the list of natural winemakers in the Loire there and people who are present, and it's, I think, yeah, we're really lucky to be here and do that, and for me, make wine in the Loire.
We're probably the epicenter in the first week of February during those fairs.
I agree. I agree. No, I think nowadays, I think there are so many regions now who have these great communities, and it's not, there's no epicenter, I think.
No.
There are more questions.
I don't know if there's any more questions.
Oh, yeah.
It's not easy with just three of us here.
Political organization. There was a question about it's we call it the syndicat. It's an organization that basically groups the president of each appellation. And so they have the board is made of these presidents, and there are some people who are, there's a staff that works for this syndicate, and the staff has been there for, I don't know, 40 years. So that's why it's so rigid, because they are not ready to change their way of working. It's not so much the president of the appellations who to move forward, but it's the staff who is there, who is like having a hard time facing the real world.
Jennifer,
I like
aristocrats and wine.
Sorry?
No. Okay.
No, go ahead. I was already at the next one, but we skipped that one, yeah. Or we
Here we're talking about.
Where's Jennifer question?
I quite enjoyed the top cats and Paris. If people like
That's a
Sonshine so
question,
much
Evelyne.
back then, was it the birth?
No.
Did you just answer that?
Yeah. In fact, it's during the 18th century, the aristocrats, and 17th and 18th century, the taste was really defined by what the aristocrats in Paris had in their cellar. And so they would import from Bordeaux, from Burgundy, and they didn't import very much from the Loire. So it was really Paris who decided what were the big wines. It was not decided on so much on the quality. It was decided, I don't know what was the criteria, but the quality definition was completely different from what it is now. So it was more a fashion because maybe they had some land there or they had a friend or whatever. But Paris still has a big role in defining the fashion. And now I think wine bars have a big defining, the fashion of natural wines. My picture is stiff.
Another question. Hear more about the political organizing you did with your peers and colleagues that you referred to. Evelyne, how many of you? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. My computer is lagging. It's scrolling.
Yeah. I've been the president of 7 years for 7 years, and during that time, it was wonderful. I think we all worked together, and we did quite a lot to promote 7 years. We did really quite many different operations. We did masterclass in the Loire Wine Fair, and we did special events with journalists, and we did quite a lot together. So that's a way. That's some kind of things that we can do. But it was difficult because the organization was always against what I was proposing. I remember, it's amazing. I remember a dinner a tasting in New York, which I organized with Pascaline Lepelletier, and Interloire would not let me do it, although Racine was hosting us for free, and Pascaline was helping for free. And Interloire wouldn't let me do it, but I did it. And I had, I think, 25 different wines from different winemakers. So I was very happy.
That's amazing. Why didn't they let you do it?
I don't know. Just I don't know. They are against. It was a new thing. It was in English. They didn't understand.
Yeah.
Racine was not the restaurants that they wanted to use. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Really great question. Are natural winemakers in the natural wine coming from other areas, as we are all on natural wine from the Loire? Yeah, we're the best. I think they all think that. But
No.
How do we feel about?
I think in France, the Loire is not as popular and has the same reputation as people see it from abroad.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
yes.
it's funny. It's really funny.
No, I think
there are some appellations.
We love to exchange wines.
Do they make natural wine anywhere? I was
They're not as natural as ours.
doing. Sorry. How does the situation change, particularly in your region, and which were the important, crucial decades? The situation changed in France, particularly in your region. The female winemakers.
Yeah, there are like.
Lisanne, you said earlier that quite.
Yeah, I think like as a female winemaker, I think women in general, we're not that like, hi, I'm a female winemaker, so now I'm gonna do something really different, or it's just you just do your thing, and on the way there are things that are more complicated, and you meet some people who are supporting you, and you meet some people who have trouble accepting the fact that you're a woman who's making wine, but I think in the end we're all doing our thing, and maybe what is changing now is that I hope people start to realize that it's not only women who do the administration, but that we actually have our hands in the vineyards, and our boots are full of mud when we come back home, and we need a hot shower because because we've been in the rain all day, or in the cold, or in the sun, or yeah, I think. But is there a crucial decade? I think it's more Evelyne who can reply to that. I'm not sure.
I hope so. I hope it's a crucial decade. I hope everything changes.
Is it now?
It has to be now. We can't wait.
Yeah, I think with everything that is happening now, and
yeah,
it is definitely. It hasn't been there yet, maybe.
But it's more difficult for
people exploiting the natural wine.
Yeah.
I must be.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think Lisanne was talking about that earlier. I think definitely now the big brands and cooperative are promoting some natural wines as well. And I'm not sure they are always natural. Everybody is now saying they make natural wine. And that has to be verified. And there is somebody, I have a blank, who is trying to organize and define natural wine, and has that we will have a certification. No, not everybody can say I'm making a natural wine, but it's the same thing for organic.
I don't know who came up with the term natural wine. Maybe in 5 or 10 years, what we are doing now will be called different, because natural wine doesn't have the same value anymore, or maybe we have to find a new name to create a kind of a new niche market. Because it's a threat.
Now,
I think it's a threat.
Right. I know there are a few vignerons who don't want to go 100% organic. They're trying to adopt more ecological farming without having to call themselves organic, or I don't know. How do you feel about that? I don't know. Maybe it's changing a little bit. They don't want to be certified organic, but they still want sort of a status of they're trying. Maybe.
Yeah,
maybe I'm a bit.
No. You're talking about HVE. Is that a new certification? That's And it's a very good question. I'm on the board of Loire Wines Association, and I raised that question that in our rule, in our regulation, in what we should follow, there is nothing about the landscape. You know, we can cut all the hedges we want. We can do, and that's not good. I mean, it's the fault of the organic certification. It should be expanded not only to wine or to just the wine farming, but also landscape care. So that gives the place, you know, it let the place for another certification, which is HVE, but which in fact maybe they don't cut hedges, but they spray chemicals.
Yeah, I agree in that. I think the reason why you don't want to grow organic, if you want to try but you don't do it fully, it's just a financial reason, because you want to have your spraying product. Well, it's all about how you communicate. If you communicate, if you're being honest to your clients, then it's something different. If you pretend to be organic and you're not, then it's
yeah, it's something. Just who do you bring in to do? Who do you bring in to do your seasonal work? Are there enough people to help? Or meaning, like from countries like the Romanians and Bulgarians. We have to come and help us. Have some locals who come and Lisanne comes in.
Yes, we can find local people. There are lots of unemployed, and there is a whole population of people who don't want to have the same job all the time, and they pick the apples. They do many different things throughout the year, and they come back for harvest and for this time of the year where we have this budding and things like that. So no, it's not difficult to find people, but if you want to come, Jess, you're welcome.
You're welcome. Are they the same people every time? Do they come in their camp there with you, or how do you do that at harvest? Do you have a big meal all together? Do they bring their own?
Well, we have different kind of people, but the big meal now is a problem because it's forbidden. So because of the pandemic, we have to make small tables and extra table. So it's a whole it's a big mess, big organization. They can't be in the same car. So it's very, very complicated right now. But normally they bring their own meal, but they are all together in the same. They have a room with a kitchen, and we do especially at the end, but also during the week. Sometimes we get together with the permanent team and do a big meal together. But I don't cook every day for them, if that's your question.
I think.
We hire about 12 people.
Yeah.
Who is for that? For me?
And which ones do you keep for yourself, both in the vineyard and in the cellar?
I'd like to before we go. Sorry, no, just before we answer that question, I'd just like to say that I'm super happy as well that since I started, I have so much help from friends, my family, and my partner. And without them, I couldn't do it. So just take the take the minute of time to thank them as well, because there's, I think, for everybody who starts, I don't know, I think so, yeah, maybe no. No, but they know that, but I think it's really important to have people around you that are always there to help, and of course there are local people to hire, but it's really nice to have people around you that know you and are always there to help. Sorry.
And to wash all your.
Well, that's a task that I really would like to delegate.
Okay. I think maybe got about 4 more minutes left. So, which tasks ones do you keep in the vineyard and in the cellar? Who wants to answer that one?
For me? Yeah, well, the organization here is that I have somebody who is responsible for the vineyard, somebody who is responsible for the cellar and all the preparation of orders, and somebody who is responsible for private customers. We have a lot of private customers coming every day. So they have their own job to do, but we meet every month, very shortly, but about once a month we discuss what they have been doing and what is the next month going to be. But roughly I decide everything and they're supposed to do it. That doesn't mean that we don't discuss. Of course we discuss the problems and we discuss the way to realize it and so on. But it's me who decide the strategy and where we go and what kind of wine we produce and how we sell them on which markets.
For me, it's a bit different because I'm alone in the company, so I do everything myself. If I delegate, then I delegate something to my keeper. Which is a really good thing, administration wise. But there are things like as a women that we have to accept that it's hard work for us. Like for me, putting stakes in a vineyard, it's a horrible job. As a woman, we don't have the same. Our body isn't built the same as yeah. So it's just a lack of strength and power, and it's sometimes really frustrating. But we just have to accept, yeah, we can do 25 at the same time as the others do 50, and it can be really frustrating sometimes, but we have to accept that there are things that are more difficult or take more time to do when you, yeah. So it's something that I like to delegate.
I think we managed an hour and a half. I think it was learning more. Before I go, I wanted to say there is somebody who's missing from Wine Fair this year. I had the privilege of here at Wine Fair. I know her well, but she's a very part of Wine Fair. So Stephanie Caslow, who is anymore, one tribute to her. She's in Burgundy. Excuse me about pronunciation. She passed away in February. She's a very much loved member. So I will again to Louis Dresner selections. I would also, I forgot to that it was also founded by Denise Lee, and that Kevin McKenna and Dresner are part was Pamela's mentor. That I will say thank you to attendees. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you again to good afternoon.